Compassion Over Killing, a Washington, D.C.-based animal protection organization, a premier group on the scene. She will be talking about Veg Eating 101, building a kinder, cleaner, and healthier world. So please welcome Erica Meier. Compassion Over Killing.
Thank you. Thank you to Bob for being the MC today. Very much appreciate it. Like he said, my name is Erica Meier. I'm with Compassion Over Killing. We are a national nonprofit organization. We're based in D.C., but we also have an office in Los Angeles that we just opened up earlier this year. And we work exclusively on farm animal issues, exposing the cruelty farmed animals endure, and also encouraging people to simply leave animals off their plates as a way to build a kinder world. And I want to, how many of you guys have been to this event before? Is this a lot of repeat people coming, and so that means there are a lot of newcomers here today, which is very exciting to see a lot of new people coming to events like this. We just hosted a DC Veg Fest in Washington, D.C. last weekend and saw a lot of new faces coming out. People are definitely interested in these issues, which is very exciting. I want to give a huge round of applause to the San Francisco Vegetarian Society for putting this event on year after year. Definitely well-deserved. A lot of great volunteers putting their time and energy into an event like this. So I'm very excited and honored to be here today. And what I'm going to be talking about, it's Vegetarian Eating 101, but it's not really about how to go vegetarian. It's going to be more focused on what we can do to make a veg-friendly world, to encourage people to make more compassionate choices. And food is such an important part of our lives. No matter what we do every single day, we all eat food, but food is not just how we view food is not just about nutrition or nutrients or staying alive or sustainability. It is really about bringing friends and family together. It's the fabric of so much of the choices that we make in order to bring people together in our lives. Birthday parties, Thanksgiving, other holidays. We take kids out for different events. And it always involves food. There's some food capacity in all of these things. And it's what brings us together. So it's not really much of a surprise when you're asking people to make changes in their diet that they're afraid that's going to impact their social lives. It's somehow going to change how they interact on a social level with their friends and with their family, with their coworkers. And so what we're starting to see more and more, can people see this screen okay? Is it a little glare? Turn some of the lights off. I'm not sure if there's a... So what we're seeing more and more, though, is that people are starting to recognize the far-reaching impacts of our dietary choices, how what we eat makes a difference in our health, how it makes a difference for animals, and how it's making a difference in the environment. We're seeing more and more of this, and there's a clear line that we're starting to see regarding health. I mean, it's not a surprise that we've been more and more learning about this, and there's more studies confirming it, but the American Dietetic Association has been saying for years that a vegetarian diet is appropriate for any stages of life, and that studies are showing that vegetarians have a lower rate of some of the most common ailments in our society, including heart disease, obesity, diabetes. This is not new information, but this is information that more people are starting to learn about. They're also starting to learn more about how vegetarian eating impacts the planet, how what we eat every day makes a difference. Livestock, according to the United Nations, livestock are one of the most significant contributors to today's most serious environmental problems, and urgent action is required to remedy the situation. This is not new information, but it's information that is starting to get out into a wider audience, and people are learning about these. For example, the University of Chicago says that when all levels of production are factored in, a vegetarian diet is the most energy efficient, and the average American does more to reduce global warming emissions by not eating meat, eggs, and dairy than by switching to a hybrid car. This is a very powerful statement coming from the University of Chicago. Carnegie Mellon did another study that says we can do more for the planet by going vegetarian 1 day per week than by switching to a totally local diet. This is information that we need to get out there more and more and let people know about how their individual daily dietary choices is making a difference on the planet. We also know increasingly it's getting out there that vegetarian eating makes a difference, of course, for animals. And this is where our organization comes in, and this is what we primarily focus on, is the animals and how the animals are being treated every day on these factory farms. There's an overwhelming scientific consensus that all animals are capable of suffering. Very few people would get out there and tell you that farm animals don't suffer. The scientific community agrees that these animals are equally capable of suffering as the dogs and cats we care for in our homes. We also know that they're experiencing the same joy, the same sorrow, the same pain, and they express compassion towards others. They value their lives every bit as much as the dogs and cats in our homes value their lives. And a lot of us are much more familiar with dogs and cats. We have them in our homes. We know when they're happy. We know when they're sad. We take them to the vet when they get sick. And animals raised on factory farms experience these same emotions, but we're less familiar with them because we don't interact with these animals on a routine basis. So it's harder for the average person to express that compassion for an animal they know nothing about. They've never met a cow, they've never met a pig or a chicken. So that's another reason that having sanctuaries is so vital, so that people can interact with these animals. But overwhelmingly, we still know from the scientific community that these animals are capable of suffering every bit as much as dogs and cats. And what's really interesting to note is we also know that Americans care about farm animals. And we know this because there are studies that have been done that show that Americans care about farm animals. And these are studies that are not done by animal rights organizations or studies done by vegetarian societies. These are studies that are done actually by the industry themselves. Industries want to know how Americans perceive farm animals. And according to Ohio State University study that was done, 81% of people in this study that they conducted said that the well-being of farm animals is as important as the well-being of companion animals. And the American Farm Bureau did another study. The American Farm Bureau found out that 95% of people think it's important for me, that this is what they said, they agreed with, it's important to me that farm animals are well cared for, coming from the American Farm Bureau. So we know that animals raised on farms are capable of suffering, and we also know that Americans, generally speaking, according to these studies, care about farm animals as much as they care about the dogs and cats in their homes. Obviously, there's a huge disconnect. 10 billion farm animals are still killed in this country every single year for food. And we're talking about cows, pigs, and chickens. We're not even talking about aquatic animals who aren't counted as individuals or counted by pound. So cows, pigs, and chickens, 10 billion animals are killed every single year for food. And that represents the blue section of this pie chart. The little sliver on the top, the darker sliver on the top, represents animals killed in all the other industries combined. Hunting, laboratories, even animals killed, euthanized in shelters every single year. The overwhelming majority, more than 98% of animals killed in the U.S. are killed simply for us to eat. When you break that number down, it's 1 million animals every single hour. So the time that we're sitting here in this presentation alone, 1 million animals will be slaughtered for food in the United States. This is a really staggering number, considering we know people care about these animals and how they're treated and that they believe they should be treated just like dogs and cats. Of course, there's this myth that animals raised on farms lead good lives. And it's a myth that starts when we're children. We read things like Old MacDonald's Farm, sing happy songs about these animals. And we grow up thinking these animals are leading fairly decent lives. And that myth is perpetuated in the marketplace. A lot of times when you go to the store, you'll see, maybe in the dairy section, a big mural of a cow standing outside in front of a red barn. Or when you pick up a package of products, it'll say something like naturally raised or an image of happy animals on these farms. And these are meant to perpetuate this myth that you start learning as a child, that these animals are leading good lives. So it's okay because these animals are happy. Of course, happy animals are going to produce for the farmer, so it's okay. Everything is just like this image of Old MacDonald's Farm with animals living outside and leading good lives. But the reality, this is what the industry doesn't want people to see. The reality is factory farming. These are intensive confinement systems with billions of animals every single year in the U.S. are overcrowded into tiny warehouses. And they're treated like mere milk, meat, and egg producing machines. And the industry goes at length to ensure that we don't see this. These are abuses that are kept hidden behind closed doors, and because farmed animals have virtually no legal protections whatsoever, these animals are routinely treated in ways that if those same abuses were inflicted upon dogs and cats in our homes, it would be prosecuted for animal cruelty. But these places are often exempt from state law, and there are no federal laws at all, that protect animals while they are on the farm. And this is what the public simply does not know, and this is what the industry doesn't want people to know about. Of course, it's easier for the industry to market their end product, something that looks nothing like an animal. It's easier for them to market this end product than to tell people where these products are actually coming from the hens in the egg-laying industry confined in tiny battery cages to chickens in the meat industry who are bred and drugged to grow so large they can barely even walk around, and they're slaughtered by 2 months of age. Pigs in the pork industry, female pigs who are impregnated and kept in gestation crates, and of course dairy calves who the males don't produce milk, so they're considered byproducts of the dairy industry, and they're kept in horrible conditions and for several weeks, and then their flesh is sold as veal. And this is the reality of where our food is coming from and what people don't know about. So when people learn about this, and this is what we go around all the time trying to educate people on, we go undercover inside these facilities to document the abuses. We bring the factory farms to the public because people aren't allowed to visit them. So we bring this information to the public and empower them to make kinder choices. And when we tell people about this, and many of you probably already know much about what I just talked about, but when people don't and they discover what's really going on, people are they scream about it. They're outraged. How did I not know about this? Like, how can this go on in our country? How is this possibly acceptable? And then other people are completely confused. They have no idea what's going on. And in my defense of this photo selection, when I used Google Images and put in confused, this is the first image that came up. So people are confused or they're outraged about it. What do they do next? Well, what we're already seeing is a growing number of people making kinder choices. They are increasingly choosing vegetarian foods. A poll by Vegetarian Times magazine shows that 7.3 million Americans are vegetarian, which is really promising to hear, growing numbers of vegetarians. What's really interesting also is 22.8 million more Americans consider themselves vegetarian inclined, meaning they're looking for vegetarian options when going out to eat or choosing to eat vegetarian foods several days a week. They're not committed yet to being vegetarian, but they're vegetarian inclined. This is very promising information. This is good information for animals. But what we're still seeing is the overwhelming majority of Americans are still eating animal products. So how do we get people from understanding that farm animals experience pain and suffering, and knowing that people care about these animals, these farm animals, how do we change their dietary choices so that they align their morals with their menu? How do we help them do that? Well, how many of you guys are vegetarian and you've talked to friends and family or people you don't even know and say, hey, I'm a vegetarian or I'm vegan, and people look at you in response and they're like, that's so good for you. I just couldn't do that. I mean, yes, you got willpower. That's great. I've tried, but I couldn't do it, right? I mean, that's a very common reaction. People think like, oh my God, that is so hard. But they know it's a good thing to do, so they're saying good for you, but it's just not for them. And that's because overwhelmingly, when people think about vegetarian eating, whether it's vegan eating, vegetarian eating, when they think about changing their diet, this is what they think about. They think it is an uphill battle, something challenging, it's a struggle, it's something that they're going to have to work at, and nobody wants to do that. People don't want to make major changes in their lives. They're going to uproot where they currently are. And so when they think about becoming a vegetarian, they think like that is absolutely impossible. And so what we need to do as animal advocates is we need to change people's perspectives on what it means to choose vegetarian foods or what it means to choose vegan foods. We need to make vegetarian eating seem like fun. Everybody wants to do it, and it's an enjoyable thing. You don't have to make huge changes in your life that change who you are. You just change the choices at every meal and make it seem like it's fun and simple. We need people who want to line up to learn about these issues, to learn about vegetarian eating and join in on this compassionate choice that we are increasingly seeing, but not enough of in the United States quite yet. How many of you guys were vegetarian maybe like 10 years ago, and you'd go out to eat and tell someone, there's really nothing on the menu, so you have to ask the waiter or the waitress, like, I'm vegetarian, do you have anything to eat? And they're like, oh yeah, we'll bring you something. And they visually would think to themselves, like, vegetarian eating is, here's a regular food plate with meat on it, we'll just take the meat off and give you what's left. So you might have, a little bit of lettuce or maybe a baked potato with nothing on it, and it wasn't really a hearty or substantial meal. But we're increasingly seeing vegetarian eating is moving from the margins to the mainstream, from fast food restaurants to 4-star restaurants are starting increasingly to add vegetarian and vegan options on their menu, which makes it easier for people to make these choices. It's a very positive step that we're seeing. We're also seeing major celebrities, talk show hosts. We have Ellen talking about her vegan diet. She now actually has on her website, Go Vegan with Ellen, guiding people on becoming vegans. We're seeing Oprah talking about taking the vegan challenge. She had her staff of over 350 people go vegan for a week and talk about it. And we're seeing Martha Stewart dedicated a show to vegan eating. Question in the audience.
Is there any data about why those people choose to go vegan? Is it for their own sort of self-image, or are they doing it because they want? Has there been any data collected about why they're doing it, I guess?
Why these specific talk show hosts are doing it?
Their followers.
That's a great question. I don't know. I think that, people are learning about different issues, how it impacts their health or the environment or animals, and talking about it and making those choices. I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know the data behind that. But we're not only seeing this issue being talked about on television, we're seeing it being talked about major headlines in newspapers, from the LA Times to the New York Times, which is very encouraging to see that people are reading about these issues. But it's not just the everyday average American reading about it, it's also the industry, restaurant news. The nation's restaurant news is the largest industry publication for food service providers. They had recently a cover story about meatless menus, and the story focused specifically on the success of vegetarian restaurants in the United States and how you're starting to see chains happen in the United States, like Native Foods is starting to create multiple locations around the country. And there are other chains that are branching out across the United States. And the article ends by saying it's not a matter of if the United States will sustain a vegetarian fast food chain, it's when. And so this is the industry talking about why it's beneficial for restaurants to start serving vegetarian options. We're also, Bill Clinton is talking about why he went vegan on CNN, reaching millions and millions of viewers, about why going vegan is better for your health. And he talks about these issues extensively on CNN. Al Gore, who has been talking about these issues for years with global warming, is finally coming out and saying that eating less meat, this is a big step, eating less meat is better for the planet. Al Gore is talking about these issues. And speaking of talking about these issues with representatives in the political field, is we use this environmental messaging with one of our state representatives in Maryland, who talked about the benefits of protecting the environment through our diet. He's not a vegetarian, but one day our local paper called him up, Senator Jamie Raskin, called him up and said, Senator Raskin, we're featuring clips from different people in our community, what we can do to help the planet. It's a Sunday afternoon, he woke up from a nap, and he said, I don't know, I think if everyone went vegetarian one day a week, I think it would be good for the planet. So it was in our local paper, I read about it, and I called him up and I said, Senator Jamie Raskin, would you go vegetarian for a week? And he was like, I talked about it, I said it, sure. It'd be great if we had a whole citywide celebration on it. And we live in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And so I said, sure, we can do that. So I put together Tacoma Park Veg Week and declared it in the middle of April, so it included Earth Day. And I went to our mayor and I said, hey, Mayor, we have our state senator who said he'll go vegetarian for a week. Will you declare Veg Week in our city? And he said, absolutely. So we got a proclamation officially declaring Veg Week in our city. Now, he has to come to this, right? We set up a kickoff party saying, Senator Raskin, please talk to the public about why you're doing this. About 100 people came. He talked to the community about why he's going to be choosing vegetarian foods for a week. After his week was up, he called me and he said, I feel so great. I think I'm just going to do it for 2 weeks. I said, that's fantastic, Senator Raskin. Let me know how it goes. So 2 weeks went by. He called me up and he said, hey, I feel really great. I think I'm just going to try this for a month now. See what it looks like for 30 days. And I was like, that's awesome. Yeah, let's do it. And so, along the way, I'm helping him figure out new foods to eat, new restaurants to go to. He starts meeting people in the community who are vegetarian or inviting him over for dinner. Restaurants want him to come and eat meals for free. He's having a blast and thinking, like, these people are so friendly. And he's having a great time. So the month goes by, and he calls me up, and he says, I feel really great. I never realized that, being a vegetarian for a month would really make me feel more energetic. I feel lighter. I feel more energetic. I don't see a reason to stop. I was like, that's fantastic. It's, May, and in the fall, in September, we're hosting a DC Veg Fest, and you have a great story to tell. We'd love for you to share it, but the speakers all have to be vegetarian. So I'm just throwing that out there, and let me know what you think. And he's like, oh, well, let me think about that. I don't want to commit to something, and let me think about it. I'll give you a call back when I, have my answer and I can figure this out. So I was like, oh yeah, absolutely, no rush. Just take your time. We have time. It's not till the fall. He calls me up the next day and he says, sign me up. I will do this. I'm committing to going vegetarian, and I will publicly talk about it. And this was in 2009. He is still a vegetarian today. He's been featured by Veg News magazine, what they're calling Raskin's Revolution, and his life-changing pledge to go vegetarian for 1 week that has turned into 3 years. We're going on 3 years coming up soon. So this is just one example of how, and politicians, he is now working with, every year we've had a Veg Week, and we've expanded it to Maryland, we had one in California. So we're expanding this, getting politicians to commit to the issues they care about. They care about nutrition, they care about animals in many cases, and they also care about the environment. So we're trying to encourage them to commit to these issues by going vegetarian for at least 1 week, allowing them to explore these new foods, to reach out to different restaurants in their communities about having vegetarian options. And we're seeing a lot of success with this. And so politicians now have a greater reach with a different community than we as an animal advocacy organization have. He's been going to the state legislature year after year, recruiting more people to become vegetarian. And it's working. Like, people are starting to understand why he's doing this and how it has changed him, and especially his health and how he feels better. So we're seeing a lot of these changes being made. There's been some talk about Meatless Mondays, and I do think that this is a campaign worth talking about. This is a lot of people are buzzing about Meatless Mondays, and as an example, the meat industry did its own study on what the impact of Meatless Mondays could possibly be. And they found that over 50% of households are now familiar with what Meatless Mondays is. 50% of households in the U.S. are familiar with Meatless Mondays. They also found in that same poll that 18% of Americans are participating in Meatless Mondays. This is a huge number, considering that less than 3% of Americans consider themselves vegetarian. We now have 18% of Americans, according to the meat industry polls itself, participating in Meatless Mondays. And the reason we're seeing so much talk about Meatless Mondays is partly because, for example, in San Francisco, a couple of years ago, In Defense of Animals and the San Francisco Vegetarian Society teamed up and reached out to the city council and convinced the city council to declare Meatless Mondays in San Francisco. And this is a way to encourage residents of San Francisco to make kinder choices to protect their health and the planet 1 day a week. And this was the first city in the U.S. to do this. It got a huge amount of media attention, drawing Americans in to listen about these issues and learn more about factory farming issues and why this is good for their health, for the planet, and animals. And after San Francisco passed its the first ever Meatless Monday resolution in the U.S., we got really jealous in D.C. and he had to do the same thing. So we worked with volunteers to reach out into the D.C. City Council, and they declared Meat-Free Mondays in D.C., which specifically encourages residents to abstain from animal products on Mondays. And we've used this, we're trying to use it in the school system, as they are in San Francisco, to encourage Meatless Mondays in the school systems. And we're also using it in restaurants, saying, your city has declared Meatless Mondays. Will you go meatless on Mondays? And I'll talk a little bit about the success of that in a minute. But I'm talking about all these good things happening for animals, happening in the world of offering more of these options. So, if it's all so good, why am I even talking about this? Why are you guys listening to this? Why am I here trying to advocate for these issues when there's so much good already going on? Well, what's really important to understand is that we as animal advocates cannot just sit around and expect these things to happen on their own. We can't be lazy about these issues. We can't just rest on our laurels. These things are happening because we're helping push to make them happen. And as animal advocates, we know that the most important thing we can do to make a difference for animals, for the planet, and for the environment is to simply not eat animals. We know that. And many of us are already making that choice. But that's simply not enough. What we need to do is advocate on the animal's behalf and empower other people to start making these choices as well. And so what I want to talk with you guys about now is a couple of campaigns that are simple to get involved in, that anyone can do, whether you're an individual activist or you're affiliated with an organization, to encourage people to make kinder choices. And more people, as this whole talk so far has been about how more people are learning about these issues. We know that more people are learning about factory farming. We know that more people are learning how it's impacting the environment, how animals are treated on farms. We know that people care about farm animals. CNN is hosting Bill Clinton talking about vegan issues for his health. And so more people are learning about it, but we need to get that information translated into changing their dietary choices. And one of the most important ways to do that is to let people know that changing your food choices doesn't mean sacrificing. It doesn't mean giving up the flavors you're used to. It simply means choosing the cruelty-free versions of those foods. And where do people find these options? We need to make these options more and more available in the marketplace so that people don't have to go out of their way to find it. We need to make it convenient and available and in the mainstream marketplace. And that's what our organization focuses on with a lot of our outreach campaigns. For example, we have a very active restaurant outreach campaign. We specifically reach out to restaurants, and we started in the DC area, asking them, just add vegan options. Have you thought about adding vegan options to your menu? A lot of your customers, like me, would appreciate it. I'm sure there are people who are concerned about their health, who want cholesterol-free options, and especially restaurants who tout sustainability message. This is so vital that they actually need to align their menu with the messaging that they're giving to consumers about sustainability. And so we've been reaching out to restaurants for several years in the DC area, successfully getting vegan menus available widely. And it's so vital because everybody eats. I mean, the National Restaurant Association estimates that more than 50 billion meals are eaten out in the United States every single year. People are going out to eat all the time. And when they go to a restaurant that doesn't have vegetarian options, they don't want to be the person in the spotlight, making these demands on the waiter. They want to feel normal. They don't want to feel like the social outcast. And so when they go to a restaurant that has vegetarian options right there on the menu, it starts to plant that seed of compassion that this is normal. This is what people are doing. This is what, I can be a part of, and I won't look abnormal. And by increasing vegan options in the marketplace, we're making it easier for people to choose compassion. And it's not only easier for people to now become vegan, but more importantly, it becomes easier for them to stay vegan because these options are so widely available. And as we're increasing vegan options in the marketplace, we're going to start seeing the decrease in demand for animal products. And I want to give you guys a couple of examples of some restaurants we've worked with. How many of you guys are familiar with Java Green in DC, if you've ever been to DC? All right, nobody. All right. Well, this is a very popular restaurant in DC. It's a destination for many people who visit our town. And Java Green, years ago in 2003, opened up. They were just a regular cafe right by K Street in downtown DC. A lot of coffee in the morning and quick sandwiches for lunch. And they had a couple of vegetarian options on their menu, not very substantial. And so they have a very eco-friendly messaging. So we went up to them and said, hey, have you guys thought about adding something more substantial to your menu, some vegan options? And they said, yeah, we kind of thought about it. I don't know. And we ended up speaking with one of the chefs there who is vegetarian. And he said, yes, I want to do this, but we don't really know how to market it. We're not a vegetarian restaurant. We don't know how to market it. And so we said, if you guys create a menu, we will help promote that menu. And so they created this very extensive vegan menu, and we sampled it. It was delicious and amazing. We said, this is so good. We think you guys should roll it out by going vegan for one day. Just take meat, milk, and eggs completely off your menu for one day. Tout it as your vegan day opening. We'll let people know about it, and we'll see how it goes. And they were really excited. They were very proud of their new menu. So they did. They launched a Vegan Day event. It was the busiest day in their history. The line was out the door. And they even had regular customers coming in ordering like the chicken sandwich, not realizing it wasn't chicken until the owner said, "Oh, I'm sorry, this is our Vegan Day. I just want to let you know that's not real chicken." And they were like, "Oh, this is great. This is fantastic." And so after this Vegan Day event, they continued with their regular menu and had vegan options. And their regular customers would come in, and many of them started ordering the vegan version of these sandwiches. And as more people started coming in, ordering the vegan version of different sandwiches, the owners, there's a family, and a couple of them were vegetarian. The non-vegetarians started learning more about these issues. They themselves became vegetarian. They're now vegan. And they decided a few months later to completely take meat off the menu. And they are an all-vegetarian, nearly vegan restaurant now. And it's all because we simply asked them to add vegan options on the menu. They have since won many, many awards for their menu. They have also opened up a second restaurant in DC. It's an all-vegan cafe. And that has also won many awards. And this is all because of a simple restaurant outreach campaign asking them to add these vegan options and then helping promote it to the community. And they say that 70 to 80%, at least 70 to 80% of their customers at their vegetarian and vegan cafes are not vegetarian or vegan. These are people who are coming in because they like this food and they know that it's better for them. So this is a really great tool to reach out to non-vegetarians, empowering them to make these choices. We have worked with dozens and dozens of restaurants throughout the DC area. We even have worked with restaurants that have had nothing on the menu, and we've convinced them to host a completely Vegan Day events to tout their menu, to reach out to new consumers as well as reach out to their existing customers. Bread and Brew is a great example of a restaurant with a very powerful eco-friendly messaging with almost nothing vegetarian on the menu. They now have several vegetarian and vegan options on the menu. Every year on Earth Day, they go completely vegan on April 22nd every year. It's been the busiest days in their history on April 22nd. And after DC passed its Meatless Monday resolution, this restaurant also decided that it will go 100% meatless every single Monday. And one quick story about this restaurant and their Meatless Monday is their first Meatless Monday, they put some signs up. And this guy walked in, didn't even see the signs, ordered his regular meal, like he comes in every lunch. And he ordered his regular meal, and the owner was there and said, "I'm really sorry, it's this Meatless Monday." And the guy was like, "Oh, God, I just want my whatever it is." And the owner was like, "I'm really sorry, but, try this instead." And just gave him something. The guy just walked out. Second Monday comes around, the guy walks in, and he goes to the counter, and he's like, "Oh, it's Meatless Monday. I just really want, his favorite meal." And the owner is like, "Well, try this instead. Here, just try this." So he walks out, and he comes back on the third Monday. And the owner is behind in her office, and she comes out, and she sees him sitting there eating his meal. And she's like, "Oh, did you forget it's Meatless Monday?" And he's like, "Oh, actually, whatever you gave me last week was so good, I wanted to come back and try more." And so this was a great way of introducing a non-vegetarian to vegan meals, and he's now coming back to try more. And so this is a simple success that is really impacting how people are making choices every day and realizing they can eat vegetarian foods without giving up what they're used to eating, without giving up those flavors. We've worked with other restaurants, specifically putting out vegan menus, Vegan Day celebrations. So this is a simple campaign. I'm going to talk next about corporate, but if you guys want to get involved in restaurant outreach, we have really great, simple restaurant manager cards to get started. These are simple tools that you guys can just leave at the table of your restaurant, give to a manager. It talks about the trends in vegetarian eating, how more people want these foods, and it's a simple way to get people in restaurants, managers, chefs, servers, to start thinking about these issues so they'll be more inclined to want to add these options. You can pick some up here today. I have a bunch that I brought here. But this is something that anyone can get involved in. Just go to your local restaurant and ask for more vegan options, and you'll be surprised by the success rate. We actually now have restaurants calling us, asking us for help to add vegan menus. we decided, so this is something that we've done in the DC area, and we've worked in a couple of other cities with volunteers to do restaurant outreach, but we decided like we want to go bigger. We want to see how we can impact the marketplace on a nationwide scale, because restaurants are in different cities and it impacts those local communities, but we wanted to impact the nationwide marketplace. So several years ago, we decided we're going to launch our first campaign. We teamed up with Vegan Outreach, and we wanted to put pressure on Morningstar Farms. You guys familiar with Morningstar Farms? It's a vegetarian food line owned by Kellogg's, and they have a lot of dairy and eggs in their products. And so we wanted to reach out to them and say, hey, why don't you just take some of those eggs out of some of the ingredients? Like, you just don't need them. You could make them vegan and appeal to a broader audience. And the people who we spoke with they understood it. They're like, yeah, we get that, and we just don't think it's going to be a priority. So we would follow up with them every few weeks and say, have you guys thought about this more? What do you think? We'd send them information on it. And they're like, yeah, we totally get it. But, I mean, unless the company starts hearing from a lot of consumers, I just don't see why they're going to make this change. So we thought, well, you need to hear from consumers. We will help you. So we put together a website, morningstareggfacts.com, and it focused on how battery cages are horrible for animals and what you as a consumer can do to tell this company you want to see them stop using eggs in their products. So after a couple of months of being bombarded with emails, we maintained contact with them all the time, and after a couple of months they came back and said, well, we can't stop using eggs altogether, but we decided, based on all the consumer feedback that we've gotten, that we will in fact begin to reduce our use of eggs. And they first announced in 2007 that starting in 2008 they would use 1 million fewer eggs in 2008, and they would continue to try to reduce their use of eggs significantly after that. And they would also introduce new vegan options on the marketplace, which they have since done. But what's significant about the 1 million eggs is that since 2008, in total, Kellogg's, as a company through Morningstar Farms, has used 4 million, a minimum of 4 million fewer eggs since this campaign started, which translates into 16,000 fewer laying hens suffering in factory farms. And people are still buying the same products they're used to, just with fewer animal or no animal products whatsoever, which is making a difference for animals. And when people realize that they can actually go vegan and eat the same products they've already been eating, it makes it easier for them to do that. So this is making vegan eating easier while also reducing the demand for animal products. So after Kellogg's made this statement, and we're in office with, at the time I think we had 5 staff members, we now have 6. But we had 5 staff members, and we thought, like, what are they? They're going to listen to us, but let's try it. Like, who are we to them? But the consumer feedback was so powerful that they made this change. And so after they made this announcement, we went up to Light Life Foods and said, hey, Light Life, you guys all know Light Life, right? They're owned by ConAgra, and they said, yeah, we totally get it. You're right, we should. I mean, we don't have as many products with eggs. We don't use as many eggs as Morningstar Farms, but we worked with them, and we did not launch a public campaign. They just said, we will make this choice. We'll let you know what we can do and when we can do it. And they were very, very responsive. And so at the end of 2008, they said at the beginning in 2009, we'll reduce our use of eggs by 166,000. And we will introduce 3 new vegan items in the marketplace in 2009. And they actually ended up introducing 6 new vegan items into the marketplace in 2009. And this company has reduced its use of eggs, which is putting, decreasing the demand for animal products at a higher level at the wholesale retail marketplace. So after Light Life made this decision and Morningstar Farms is still reducing eggs, we thought, well, what are we going to do now? We decided we would go to the next company, which is Boca. You guys familiar with Boca Foods? So Boca is owned by Kraft, and when we had already contacted Boca a year prior, and they were like, thank you for it was very straightforward, thank you for your concern, we'll pass it on to the appropriate department. And that was it. And we kept contacting them, and they kept saying, thank you, but no, thank you, but no. So finally we said, hey, maybe you guys won't listen to us, but what do you guys think if consumers start contacting you? We put together a website. We sent them the link to the website before we launched it publicly. And we got the longest response from this company we'd ever gotten. And they wanted to talk about these issues now. And so we said, great. Well, you can also talk about it with consumers who will be contacting you through our website, bocaeggfacts.com. And we launched BocaEggFacts.com. We teamed up with a couple other organizations, including Mercy for Animals, got it out to our members who then shared it with people nationwide. In 2 weeks, the company was so bombarded with calls and emails. They called me up and said, please, will you put a moratorium on your campaign? We'll do something that I think you'll be really happy about. But we can't keep responding to customers. We can't keep getting these emails and these calls. So I said, we'll consider it, but we want a statement from you. We want to know a deadline of when you're going to make this announcement. And if we put a moratorium on it, we need to tell our members why we're doing this. So they created a statement with a self-imposed deadline of 4 weeks. And they said within 4 weeks, if you put a moratorium on your campaign within 4 weeks, we will have an announcement that I think you'll be very, very happy with. So not even 4 weeks goes by. We put a moratorium on the campaign. Not even 4 weeks goes by, and Boca contacts me and says, we will become 100% egg-free starting in 2010. So Boca Foods right now has no eggs in any of their products, 100% egg-free, and it's because consumers like you reached out to them and put pressure on them to make this change. And we have since reached out to other companies to make this change. One example is Pita Pit, which is a nationwide restaurant chain mostly located near college campuses. They have over 100 locations, and they were about to introduce a vegan or they were going to introduce a vegetarian patty on their menus. And we jumped in and said, hey, why don't you just make it vegan? That way you can market it to more people. And so they now have, they introduced a few months ago, a all-vegan black bean patty. The company, a month later, declared it a huge success. And this has been such a popular item in all of their stores nationwide. The way that they're advertising it themselves is, don't substitute meat, surpass it, introducing the spicy black bean patty, a healthy way to get your protein. And so this company has been very, very responsive and really excited to see the success of this new vegan option on their marketplace. And a lot of people, when we start talking about working with these national corporations or companies, say, well, have you guys ever talked to Corn? Are you guys familiar with Corn? Corn is a company based in the UK. They actually don't have anything vegan. It's an all-vegetarian line. They have dairy and eggs in all of their products, and it says it right on their website that our products are not suitable for vegans. So we contacted them and said, have you guys seen what Morningstar, Boca, Light Life has done? Like, this is what consumers in the US want. They increasingly want to see vegan options available in the marketplace. And the company was immediately responsive and said, this is really going to take us a long time. We've tried before, it hasn't worked, but we understand. And in the meantime, we're going to see what we can do to start making a difference for consumers. So if you contact the company, what you would have gotten a few months ago, actually, is a letter back from the company basically saying that they're grateful to Compassion Over Killing for bringing this to their attention. And they have now instituted 2 major areas of technical work. First is that they have a technical priority to increase the research that they're doing to make a completely egg-free product that is not quality compromised. And the second thing that they immediately started doing is reducing the number of eggs they use in all of their products sold in the U.S. And by doing that, they have already used at least 1 million fewer eggs in their products in the United States. Well, we've been in touch with the company since they put this statement out in 2010. And the company is actually now introducing a new vegan option in the U.S. marketplace starting early October. It will be available in a variety of stores. We're actually working on still getting that list. It's not yet in the marketplace, but there is a new corn option that's 100% vegan, no dairy, no eggs, available in the U.S. And look on our website in the next coming weeks. We're going to have a list of the stores that they have been working with to start selling it, including some Whole Foods and other stores like that across the country. So this all just came from asking, and that's really the important part of this is asking. We actually now have a campaign asking Subway to add vegan options. 10 years ago, Subway was probably the only place in town on a fast food level that you could go and get a vegetarian option, which is the same exact option it is today. It's some bread with a little bit of lettuce on it and a tomato. And it's basically a really boring salad on some bread. And it's not substantial. It doesn't have any protein, and we are trying to encourage this company to add a vegan deli slice, something like tofurkey, to its menu. The company, we're in touch with the company. They've been responsive about it. They haven't yet implemented this, but we need consumers like you, just like we had in our other successful campaigns. We need consumers like you to reach out to the company, tell them what you want to see. And we're not doing this so that vegan eating is easier for vegans. Sure, it's helpful. It's great that we can do this. But what we're doing is increasing vegan options in the marketplace so non-vegans can see these options and start making more compassionate choices. And so we need consumers like you to reach out to them and tell them what you want. And the bottom line of all of this is none of this will happen if we don't ask. We have to get out there and ask. We have to speak out on behalf of these animals. And you can see by the campaigns that I talked about, these were successful campaigns because people asked them to make a change. They're not going to do it on their own. They need to know that people want these changes to happen. So every single one of you in this room has the power to make these companies, to make these restaurants change, to make vegan options more available in the marketplace, and to start introducing your friends and families to these options that are increasingly available. We have the power to make immediate and lasting changes for animals. I want to thank you guys for coming to the talk. If you guys want more information, let me know. So I think the exhibit hall might actually be closed, so I don't even know what time it is. If we can do Q&A, or if people want to, if you have any questions, come up and talk to me afterwards. Yeah, and if you guys want restaurant cards, please feel free to come up and grab some. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much.
I came in late, so I didn't know where you were from.
With compassion.